The Reaper's Trust. Chapter 4. Walls Closing In. Thoughts grew torturous and memory sour. The once comforting cottage was now a prison to Violet, just as her skull was to her mind. She sat on her bed, unable to focus on anything but her ire. The image of Charles had twisted over the years, slowly morphing from an inspiring figure to something repulsive and tyrannical. Violet didn't like the way she left things. She could still hear his voice calling her name desperately. He sounded like a broken parent, but she spared no pity for liars. This entire world wore the mask of a utopia, but Violet knew better. She knew the truth, the disgusting face which hid behind that mask, grinning and scheming. Again, the mage looked to her snow globe. The white flakes fell peacefully, not a care to be found. Violet lowered her head, knowing she had nowhere else to go. Her family had long forgotten her, surely. Entangled in a web of negativity, Violet had to move her mind and magic. She began to pace around her bed, conjuring tall blue crystals in sharp and jagged shapes. They jetted from the carpet like stalagmites, crackling with stray energy. They served only to tire their creator. Violet knew if she didn't get her pent-up anger out somehow, she may end up hurting something or someone. The crystals scraped the ceiling before Violet finally lost her focus. She clutched her stomach, enduring the shooting pain which reminded her of those that abused her. Jueva was surely asleep, and she wasn't comfortable seeing another medic. Despite her magical prowess, she was no healer. Once again, she had no option but acceptance. A knock on the door startled her, and she dematerialized the crystals, which had nearly encaged her entire bedroom. They crumbled into energy that fizzled away. "Hey, Violet! It's me! Comet! Remember?" called the peppy voice from behind the door. Violet sighed in relief. Comet was annoying, but she was not wicked. Of course. Violet reluctantly let Comet inside. "Are you okay?" asked the messenger. "You don't look so hot." Violet breathed slowly. She rested a gentle gaze on her visitor. "Comet, are you happy here?" "Yeah, I love it here." "Good." Violet turned her eyes away. "That's good." Comet glanced back and forth before breaking the silence. "Hey, I've got great news for you. I thought it was weird that you haven't gotten any mail from your family, so I told the other messengers about it, and..." "You what?" Violet raked a hand through her hair. "That's personal." "No, it's okay. One of them is, super messy, and he looked through his extra bag and found this." Comet extended her hand with a swift movement. In it was a letter, a tad bent. Violet's eyes widened. They lined with tears. She recoiled back as if being threatened, although this was the exact opposite. The happiness felt foreign. The letter she saw was more than paper. It was a light. It was a bright, warm light in the deep darkness of light. Slowly, Violet took it in her shaky hands. It was no doubt addressed to her. Tears, ripe with joy, trickled down her porcelain face. Finally, she would hear from her family. Finally, she would catch up with her sister. Finally, positivity had blessed her life. Comet clapped her hands quickly. "Oh, this is great! Do you mind if I stay and watch? I'm just so excited for you!" Violet didn't answer. She didn't care. Her hands trembled uncontrollably as she opened the envelope with the precision of a surgeon. All sound drowned out. Violet's vision tunneled. She pulled a folded sheet of paper from the envelope and opened it. Her heart pounded with excitement. Her eyes zoomed to the bottom and saw the name, Amber, was signed there. Violet looked back to the top, barely breathing through her joyous grin. The scribbles on the page read, "Sister, I always kept this to myself for Dad's sake, but you've been gone for a while now, and I need to get it off my chest. I never loved Jane. Acting for so many years was hard, but I know our father wanted us to get along, so I did it for him. I was never more thankful than the day you left. No more pretending. No more misery. Don't you get it? Or are you too stupid? I don't have a..." The page fell onto the bed. Tears fell there too. "What's wrong?" asked Comet. "Violet, tell me." The rain, which poured from Violet's eyes, answered clearly enough. Comet stepped forward and gently put her hand on the mage's convulsing back. Senses muffled and feelings flooded. Violet was stuck in her own head with only herself to talk to. Questions which stormed showed no mercy, surrounding and attacking the wounded mind they were confined to. The memories of home that Violet had cherished laughed in her face. They couldn't be lies. She begged herself. She wouldn't look at the sinister words again, but they were branded into her brain. The proof was on the page, mocking her. "Comet," Violet gagged. "Get away from me." "No, you need someone," replied the messenger, her tone stiff. Violet stared, her blue eyes glistening with tears. Her breathing stuttered, and her voice was cold. "Just get away from me." "I don't think you'll find happiness all alone." Comet shook her head. "Go, please!" Azure sparks flashed from the mage's eyes. A crack webbed across the snow globe. The books shook in their shelves. It stopped, and Violet's furious face softened as she shed more rain. "Please." Comet flinched. She paused, then hugged Violet briefly before backing away. "You can always talk to me." She vanished. Violet collapsed on her bed, sobbing. Sorrow and anger clashed. Feelings of confusion and betrayal warred. Her mind, already shaken, was a battleground. It fought itself with the intent to kill. Hours passed. Violet remained sprawled on her bed like a corpse, bathing in the haunting blue light of the candles. "Amber, how could you do this to me?" she muttered. Her weak voice echoed back to her. She yearned to wail, but felt like she had cried out all the moisture in her body. The betrayal of her mentor and her sister prodded at Violet's psyche. Emptiness had plagued her all night, but that void was suddenly filled by something vile. Deep inside, Violet felt something stirring, twisting. Chills crawled up her spine, and her insides grew cold and hollow. She groaned, succumbing to the nausea that accompanied the mysterious sensation. At last, she dragged herself up languidly. She ignited her magic, which poured from her eyes in its typical blue, sparkly display. The candles extinguished and black filled the room. Fresh air tempted the mage, so she sulked outside against her better judgment. The time neared 3 a.m. All was quiet and dark, and the gentle breeze was far superior to the air that filled her stuffy cottage. She started along the cobblestone path, heading nowhere in particular. A destination was far from her focus when she was ill with sorrow. She walked until she was far from the cottages. This world was tiny, smaller than even the most miniature of moons. It didn't take long for her to wander off from the civilization that Charles' candidates made. The only civilization. She wasn't surprised when she had entered into thin woods. No matter where Violet was on the small world, she could look up and see the floating island. It hung peacefully in the sky, mocking her with its lies. She frowned at it, contemplating. No one occupied it now, so she briefly considered destroying it. A strong blast of her magic would surely do some damage, she thought. One sigh later, she knew that would be pointless. Petty destruction wouldn't make the king honest, and it wouldn't make Amber love her. But it would make Violet feel a lot better. She shook her head at the idea and continued walking, only to soon halt. She sensed movement nearby. Slow and calculated, it drew near. She whipped around. Who's there? For a while, it seemed to Violet that her night couldn't get any worse. She regretted that notion when she saw a figure creeping closer through the maze of trees. Violet stepped back and whimpered, "Please, have mercy. Don't do this to me right now. I can't take it." "I don't show mercy to people who threaten my friends," replied the figure. He came close enough to see, where his long coat and painted abstract mask showed under the moonlight. Violet tilted her head, clueless as to what his occupation was. Anger seeped through the uneven tones of his voice. Why did you threaten Lily? I didn't threaten anyone, Violet said. She internally scolded herself for walking about at night. I don't even know Lily. Just, please, leave me alone. She said, purple hair. I've been looking for you. Honest, I didn't. Didn't threaten her with magic? The man crept forward. Violet had forgotten her encounter with the tailor. The memory slapped her hard, and she bit her tongue. Answer me! The man slapped his gloved hand into Violet's face, throwing her to the ground. She grunted when she hit the dirt. He yelled, That's messed up! You're going to pay for it! Violet got to her hands and knees. Everything's messed up, she shouted, tears streaming over her face. The man swooped down and snatched Violet by the turtleneck of her sweater. He threw her back into a nearby tree and pinned her there. She cried quietly, looking down at their feet. You better look at me when I'm talking to you, screamed the man. Going silent, Violet did as he demanded. She raised her head and stared at his mask with round, soft eyes that were flooded with liquid despair. She gazed deep into the swirls of color that decorated his false face. Never had she met the man behind the mask, so all she saw in him was the culmination of her hatred. Was there nothing left? Her goals had been destroyed before her very eyes. Her family despised her. Her mentor tricked her. Those who should be her acquaintances made an enemy of her instead. The man was still yelling, but it melted into muffled noise. He woke Violet from her trance when he pressed her back roughly against the tree. You listening? Violet twitched, her eyes glassy. The dark feeling returned, twisting and frothing in her chest. Her breathing was shallow, and blue sparks began to crackle around her eyes. That's enough, she whispered. Don't talk. Fuck. Violet glanced at the floating island. The king's lies echoed in her mind. He told her to be the bigger person, but why should being the bigger person mean being the weaker person? Violet stared deeply at the mask before her. Behind it, she saw her mentor, her sister, and all those who tormented her. She breathed, the magic sparks darkening. I hate you. At last the man faltered. It was not Violet's words, but her tears that made him step back. They had gone completely black, running down her pale face like streaks of ink. She heard the sweet fear in his breathing, and the urge to unleash her magic became too strong to resist. Screams exploded from the man when tendrils of smoky, shadowy energy rose from the ground. One pierced his chest, and the others wrapped around him viciously. Violet stepped forward from the tree, towering over him. The energy around her widened eyes was black as night and crackled in thick streams. The sparks twisted into dark bubbles, which frothed uncontrollably like poison, and produced the faint sound of screams. Violet let the toxic magic run through her veins, breathing slowly as she harnessed it. The man's body fell victim to the dark tendrils. They licked around the trees like black fire and spilled the masked man's blood into the grass. A loud, splitting crack echoed through the fog as his limbs were bent back. His shrieks, desperate and feral, rang between the trees. Blood splattered onto the mage, adding a stroke of color to her white face. She watched, focused and absorbed, as the man's mask broke. One of his eyes was revealed, and Violet stared straight into it as the life within drained. His body fell limp, his screams silent. Violet stepped back. Black magic stormed around her eyes in a vigorous, hazy display. It didn't stop, and the tendrils continued to whip hungrily. She fought with herself, moaning in anguish as she struggled to regain control. The pain was dizzying, like the black magic was burning holes into her psyche. She panted. Her vision finally cleared. The frothing energy at last began to slow until it disappeared. The magic tendrils sank back into the ground, fizzling away into nothing. Silence returned, and peace with it. No, Violet breathed, trembling. Please, no. This can't be real. Her eyes were glued to the bloody mess before her. There was no point in asking the pile of limbs if it was all right. Terror raked its claws through Violet, and her knees shook, paralyzed by fear. Most horrifying of all was how much she enjoyed the feel of revenge and the taste of the black magic. Holding in her screams, she demanded her body to move. Move, she begged herself. Like lightning, the locks of fear on her joints shattered. She bolted. She ran like a hunted animal, wildly dashing between the trees in no particular direction. No matter what, she had to escape. Violet hoped with all her might that this was a nightmare. She ran faster than she had ever until she tripped and hit the ground. Her eyes whirred behind her to see a long, black vine jutting from the ground by her foot. She hurried to get up, but felt something brush against her neck and froze. Her eyes darted back and forth to see spindly, smooth vines inching towards her. Their movements were slow and eerie. Violet trembled, trapped in horror's grip again. One of the vines gently furled around her neck. "You poor little thing," rasped a voice. Violet desperately tried to locate the source, but found no root to the voice or the vines. All she saw was a pond at the center of the clearing in the trees. The vines stretched all around the water's edge. "Why so shaken up?" the voice continued. "There is no need to be afraid." Careful listening was crucial, for Violet could barely define the voice. It was soft, but nearly emotionless. It sounded both masculine and feminine at once, yet also neither. Violet took deep breaths and tried to collect herself. She was by the water's edge. She slowly dipped her fingers in, hoping that somehow the flow of liquid would calm her. "Who are you?" she asked when she was able to speak. "I am Senkarts," answered the voice. "Violet, I've been waiting to see you embrace the dark power you were born with." "But I don't have—" Violet shook her head. "I've never seen or heard of magic like that. No, none of that was real. It couldn't have been." The vines forcefully yanked her head over the surface of the water. Its reflection was clear and illuminated by the moonlight. "Look." Violet peered into the shifting surface of herself. She saw her soft features, her pale face, and her dark hair. The gentle blue eyes in the water stared back at her. Among that pretty image was a slash of crimson. Blood was splattered diagonally across her face. "No!" The mage thrusted her head into the water to wash off the blood, and also to hopefully wake herself up. She surfaced with a gasp, sad to find she was still in this nightmare. A low laughter rolled from Senkarts. "I want to hear you say it. Tell me," they cooed. "Tell me how wonderful it felt to reap his life." Violet rapidly shook her head. She whimpered, "No, murder is wrong." Senkarts laughed. "That didn't stop you before."